Hello everyone, my name is Nobukhosi and welcome to Voice It Youth Talk Show, a talk show for the youth from the youth, whereby as the youth we get to voice out challenges that we may not be able to communicate with our parents, guardians, or even our friends. Well, Voice It has got your back. I'm not alone. Joining me today is my lovely co-host, Brendan.
Hello, I am the lovely Brandon, and today we are under the theme real life issues. And today we've got two wonderful guests, my handsome brother Michael and my beautiful sister Khosi here, and we're going to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Nobukhosi Sibanda, Khosi in short, and I'm happy to be here today.
Yeah, I am new here, and my name is Michael Mpofu. And yeah, hopefully the episode will be great.
Thank you. So to begin this wonderful session, the first question is, can failure actually be a setup for greater purposes or for a greater purpose?
The answer is very much simple. It seems like a rhetorical question. The answer is yes, failure can. I would like to define failure as, you see, when you have set goals for yourself, you have something that you want to do, something that you want to achieve, right? So when you miss the mark and you don't actually achieve what you want to achieve, that's my definition of failure. When I don't do well, for example, maybe at school, I was reading for a test and studying so hard, expecting myself to pass. Then all of a sudden, results are coming, and yeah, it's not looking good. So that's failure to me. So in that moment, I wouldn't realize, which this is actually good for me. But later on, as I just review my day and introspect, I realize that that is something that is good for me, something that will help me to be able to grow and become a better person. Because God says in Jeremiah 29 verse 11, "For I know the plans that I have for you." Yeah, and so on and so on. So we have to realize that God has plans for us to succeed, successful plans for us to do good in life. So we have to realize that failure is not just failure. It's like a redirection.
Actually, on that, a lot of people always quote Jeremiah 29:11. And for a very long time, I felt like it was just a verse that everyone quotes. But I just want to ask, do you have a personal testimony or where that verse actually applies? Because we can all just say something about it. But do you ever have somewhere in your life where that verse actually applied, where you failed, but then you realized later that it was actually better for you?
Of course, you want to take that one?
I think just going back to school, we're students. So just going back to school, I remember it was O-level. I panicked so much, final exams, am I going to pass, am I going to fail? And I let that worry and stress consume me, and I was so worried. And it's so hard to trust. We say, trust God's plans, it'll all work out, but it's very hard to do. But in the end, I did well, and then looking back, I realized I should have just trusted that God has it all planned out for me. So it's very easy to say, Jeremiah 29:11, God says he knows the plans he has for us. And, we say that in passing. But looking back at that time in my life, I really should have just trusted God, because in the end, it all worked out for the good. So, yeah.
Right. On the issue of failure. So now, when you fail, what lies are easy to believe and what truths can conquer those lies?
So when we're faced with whatever trial, tribulation, failure, rejection it may be, it is so easy for us to dwell on the negative.
Right.
To dwell on negative thoughts and to let those thoughts consume us and define us. So what lies do you just start telling yourself? I'm worthless. I am a failure. I'm not good enough. God doesn't love me anymore. God cannot use me anymore. It's so easy to dwell on those lies. They're lies because they're not true. So to dwell on those negative thoughts. But what does the Bible have to say about all of this? When you feel worthless, what does God say? Our worth is not defined by our success, our accolades. Ellen White says, God sees not as men see. Men will judge you based off of appearances, based off of what you've done, what you've achieved in life. But what does God do? God searches your heart and then judges you righteously. So that's what the Bible has to say about that. When you feel like God doesn't love you anymore, we need to know that God's love for us is unconditional. There's nothing we could ever do that could stop God from loving us. A good example of this in the Bible is the story of the prodigal son. This boy is living lavish, as we would say. He had everything he could ever need and want in life. But we see him leave his father's house to be of the world and be with the world. And then when that doesn't work out, in the end, he then decides, let me go back home. I have a loving father. I have everything I could possibly want and need back home. Let me go back. And we find that father there waiting with open arms, waiting to receive this boy. So in that story, we are the boy and God is the father. He's always there, waiting with open arms, waiting for us to come back to him. So there's nothing we could do that could make God stop loving us. We're saying what failure or rejection. Maybe You've been trying to let go of a certain sin. You've prayed to God, asking him to give you strength to overcome, but you failed and you've fallen right back into it again. God still loves you, even when you've fallen back into that sin, but he's there waiting for you to come back to him.
To add on to what Kosi was saying, at times it's not necessarily the lies that you tell yourself, but actually something that is true. For example, Moses stuttered or was a star, right? But he used that as an excuse in order for him to not fulfill the purpose that God had in plan for him. And Jeremiah as well. Jeremiah was telling God, no, Mina, I'm a child, I'm a youth. How can I fulfill your purpose? That was true, but then it was something that hindered him to be able to fulfill that purpose. So at times it will be the truth, yes, but then we use it as an excuse for us not to do what God says we should do.
Actually, on that note, the way the conversation and the direction that it's taking, it's making it seem maybe as though God is the one that always brings failures. But what about the failures that we bring on ourselves because of the consequences of our own actions? What lies can we tell ourselves in those situations? Like where I failed, I did something I shouldn't have done, and I know. What toxic lie can I actually tell myself in that situation?
But then does God really bring failure?
No, he doesn't. But then my question is, what lie can we tell ourselves in the situation where we have caused ourselves to fail? What are some of the lies we tell ourselves?
I think that's what Kosi was alluding to as well.
God has forsaken me. Those are lies we tell ourselves. But you brought this onto yourself. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, cognitive distortions that you say, okay, I'm not good enough. For example, me, I'm young, so I'm young, I cannot do this, or whatever. Those simple things that you tell yourself, not good enough, I cannot do this. How could I, of all people, be able to do this? Thinking that you're not.
I think also blaming. I was looking from the direction of sometimes when I fail and I do something wrong and it comes back to bite me, I tend to blame everyone else
around me,
except take accountability for what I've done. So that's also maybe one of the lies that I can tell myself to say, but no, the other person didn't fulfill their side of the story. That one didn't do this. That one didn't do this. But I myself am failing to take accountability that even I was wrong in the situation.
Yeah, blaming everyone else but yourself for the things that you did, because you had the choice to choose between right and wrong, but you chose wrong. So, why blame everyone else but yourself?
Exactly.
Now, there's this verse, Romans 8, verse 28. What does Romans 8, verse 28 mean to you?
So
in this case?
Let me read it out. It says, "And we know that all things work together for God, or for good, to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." So the verse starts by saying, and we know that all things work. It reminds me of Philippians 4, verse 18, which says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So in order for me to do everything that I want to do, God should be in the center. In order for me to succeed and fulfill the purpose that I have or the purpose that God has for me, I should always trust in God. You should have that relationship with God. That is what helps you to face disappointment, helps you to face failure or rejection from anyone else. You should have that relationship with God and constantly grow in that relationship. Pray to God and pray with others as well. Pray with a friend, family member, anyone, and just read the Bible every day, even though it's hard to do. But it's something that you have to do as well.
Actually, on that note, when you spoke about praying with others as well, how can we support friends who are going through that rejection period or that failure period? Because it can get very lonely.
So first things first, you may not always have the solutions or the right words to say, but just be there to listen. Secondly, which now that I think about it, should have been the first thing I said, pray with them. Pray with them and pray for them. tell them about your own personal experiences. Sometimes it really helps knowing that someone else has been through what you're going through. It's very easy to say, oh no, you'll get through this, you'll be fine, when you've never been through what that person is going through. Right. But if you relate to that specific situation and, you tell them about how God carried you through that, it helps them, always remember, Uti, God will carry me through this. If he could get through it, then I definitely will too. So, yeah. And then remind them that failure isn't final. There's a verse, I just can't remember where it is. It says, though the righteous fall 7 times, they will rise again. So failure isn't the end of the world. Let it not be the defining moment of your life. There is life after that failure with God. So, yeah, failure isn't the end.
Actually, another very crucial verse is Psalm 34:19. Great are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord doesn't leave them alone. So even in that time of failure, even that period, we should always remember that we are not alone. Yeah. And it's very easy to just quote, but really, when you know that in your heart that He's with you, there's this joy and peace that you feel.
Yeah, that's right. I think you have to have an experience with God first in order for you to understand these verses. It's one thing reading about it, and it's another thing actually experiencing them. Going through that tough time, that tough period in your life, failing actually, in order for you to understand God better and understand Him in a different light. So our failures, they're not just failures, they're opportunities for us to better ourselves. So, yeah.
Right. Are there any biblical characters that we can take note of who experienced failure or rejection, and what was their response to that?
Okay, we have Peter as our first example. Peter failed as a disciple. He denies Jesus, and then there's a point where he's, cutting off the soldier's ear. He failed as a soldier. As a disciple. But then what happens to Peter in the end? He is then used to lead the early church. Job lost everything. He felt rejected. He lost it all. And the people closest to him were telling him to curse God, But Job remained faithful to God. And in the end, he was blessed. Joseph was rejected by his own family members. But, he stays faithful to God even after he's jailed unjustly. And in the end, he becomes the governor of Egypt. So I think those are biblical characters we can learn from.
Right.
Another example is Elijah. Elijah was rejected by Ahab and Jezebel. And what he did He actually ran away. And he fled to the wilderness there. And what I would like to draw from that experience is God was there for him. God actually took his time, say, okay, my child, I get that you're going through such a difficult time, but I'll not forsake you. I'll be there with you and I'll help you be able to get through this. So, yeah.
Paul says we have not a high priest who does not understand our infirmities. And also says that God understands that we are just dust. We are just merely human beings. Yeah. So he knows that even sometimes, no matter how hard things get, actually, He understands that we are weak, and He's also there to actually to strengthen us.
He gets that very human after all.
Yes.
Yeah.
But this has been a wonderful episode. We are going to go into our question and answer episode where we actually tackle questions from other people who have been experiencing failure and they're wondering exactly where God is in this and how they can actually see His presence. So we'll catch you on the second segment.